Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another YouTube video. So in this one, we're going to talk about why you keep restarting your fitness journey. And this is going to be super important for anyone who's been in a situation where they've been trying to lose weight, they've been trying to get back in the gym, and it just the habit just never seems to stick. So we're going to get into the deep psychology behind why this happens and what you can actually do to actually make this the last time you actually start your fitness journey. So what I want you to do right now is actually be honest with yourself. And, I want you to ask yourself, how many times has this actually happened? You've restarted your fitness journey, not just once, not twice, multiple times. It's happened over and over and over again. And, you're getting into this mindset of, will it actually even happen? And every time that you restarted, you were like, okay, this is it. I'm locked in. This is actually going to happen. This is actually the first time, the last time I'm actually going to, try this whole fitness thing. Maybe you saw a super motivational YouTube video. Maybe you got hyped up by a friend. Maybe you have your wedding coming up and you're like, okay, this is actually when I'm going to make this happen. And this is going to be the last time I actually ever have to commit to this. And then what happens inevitably is that you end up a couple of weeks later and you're just like, you gave up because you had one bad day, you binge ate, you went to a wedding and you ate too much, or you fell off your gym routine for a couple of days and you was like, okay, screw it, like this is not for me. And the cycle keeps repeating itself, and you wait, or you get into your normal routine for another 3 months, 4 months, and then you're back at it when you see another piece of motivation, or you just get that sense of like, okay, I just actually need to do this again. And, no, it doesn't really matter what you actually do tangibly, because, you could buy the gym membership, you could download all the cool fancy apps like MyFitnessPal, Chronometer, whatever. You can even tell your family, your wife, that you're serious this time. I'm going to do it. And it just never seems to stick. And what it is, it's not what you think it is. You think the problem is motivation. You just don't you don't feel motivated in the moment, right? It's not discipline because, as I'll show you, you have discipline when you actually have a solid, direction to point it towards. And it's not a question about the right plan either, because you've had the right plan. So what's actually going on? When you think about it, you've had motivation. And I want you to think about when you had that day one of your most recent attempt. I can guarantee with 99%, conviction that you were actually super motivated on day one. So it's not a question of, motivation was lacking. When it comes to discipline, if you've gone through Ramadan, no matter when you're watching this, you fasted 29 or 30 days in Ramadan without complaining. And it wasn't a question of like you not having discipline for Ramadan, so you gave up at like day 8 or something. You actually stuck it through. And you've had plans, you've sought, you've seen multiple YouTube videos, you've maybe purchased some workout plans, meal plans, whatever. You've tried a bunch of different things. So it's not any of those things. What it is you've never changed who you are fundamentally. And, the way I want you to think about it is that you've changed, every time you've done this, you've changed your behavior. You've started doing fit person things or healthy person things or whatever you want to call it, while still seeing yourself mentally as someone who's out of shape. This is critical because when there's that incongruence between who you are, who you see yourself as, and the tactical or the tangible things you're doing, it creates that disconnect where you never truly change who you are at the core of your person. And I want you to think like this. That's like wearing a suit and, you're walking around like you're the CEO or like, a C-level, C-suite executive around the office, but you still see yourself, you still think of yourself as a janitor. Now, I'm not knocking janitors, but I'm trying to make a point that, you could put on the fanciest suit, you could put on like a $2,000 suit, but if you still see yourself as like an entry-level person or as an intern in the company, then eventually that suit will start to feel wrong. It'll feel like you're wearing something that makes you feel like a fraud. And that's exactly how it is for you right now. You are doing all the things. You have the suit of, you have your gym bag, you have your workout plans, you have your meal prep containers, you have all these different tangible things. But at the core of it, you still see yourself as the overweight, fat guy. And until that self-image changes, you're not going to make any tangible progress in your fitness journey. And what it all comes back to is that your behavior reverts to your identity every single time. And until you change who you believe you are, nothing will truly stick. It's like pulling a rubber band. You can only pull the rubber band so much before it has to, at some point, snap back to its original position, right? It's not about how far can you pull it back, because the nature of who you are is a rubber band. We need to change who you truly are at your core. And the way the cycle works, I've actually, you've experienced this, but I want to actually break this down for you. And if this is something that is resonating and you're like, hey, this is actually something I've been dealing with for a long time, then I can, what I do for my mentorship clients is I break this down for them. I go through an entire assessment in terms of how we need to work on their identity. So if that's something you're interested in and you want one-on-one support in terms of actually doing this, then go to the description, fill out the application for working with me. And if you're the right fit, we'll hop on a call and I can actually break down what that identity work will look like for you. But coming back to the video, the way the cycle works is that, first of all, you get the emotional trigger, right? So you have something in your environment that pulls you like, hey, you feel hyped. Maybe you saw like a YouTube video, or, you feel really bad about yourself, or whatever the case is. So you get that emotional trigger, right? That creates that motivation spike where it's like, okay, this is the time I'm actually going to do it. This is where it's going to happen. And you feel really good, you're hyped up, and you put everything together and you put on that suit that we talked about. But what inevitably happens is that life comes up. Life comes up. You have a busy week of work. Maybe you have to travel for a wedding. Maybe it's something like Ramadan, or you're going to Umrah. So all these different life, interruptions come up. And because you haven't built the identity of someone who can operate no matter what's going on, then your old identity returns. You revert back to who you are at the core of it. And you feel bad and you're like, hey, this is not for me. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And you're looking at yourself like, hey, I'm getting older. Maybe I should just focus on my family. And you get all into this weird state of mind. And that goes on for a couple of months. And then the cycle repeats itself. And that's a loop. Fundamentally, this is how the loop works. And you've been stuck in it for years at this point. If you're watching this and something about this video called you to it, then you know that I'm being right about this. You have been stuck in this pattern, this loop for years at this point. Now, let me tell you about my loop. And this is going to be, something that a lot of guys experience. But before I actually got in shape, and you can watch the rest of my YouTube videos in terms of how I lost over 50 pounds and what my process was. But over the years, if you looked at before I actually got in shape, what the year would look like for me, you have January 1st, as it is for everyone starts strong. They have their New Year's resolutions, they're locked in, and everyone telling themselves that this is the year, this is my year. And then by March, because I didn't build the identity, something snaps, something comes up, and it's like, okay, you quit again, as you've done in previous years. And then depending on when Ramadan falls in that year, you tell yourself like, hey, I'm fasting anyway, so like I can't really start on my fitness journey. There's too much going on. I want to focus on my worship, which is valid. But then, you start again, and, maybe you do start some fitness journey, but it doesn't never really truly materializes. And then after Eid, you quit again because you're like, hey, Ramadan was difficult. I just need to get back to my routines. And, that's just a pattern that you fall into. By September, you are looking back at summer. It's like, okay, summer, I wasn't able to get in shape for summer. I went to the weddings. I wasn't looking at my best. So now is the time. Now is a winter arc, or whatever you want to call it. And you're like, okay, time to lock in. But then by November, you quit again. Because what I'm trying to show you is that over the year, this pattern keeps happening because your identity is not anchored in the version of yourself who can execute no matter what month it is of the year. And for me, I had the plans. I had the workout apps. I had multiple YouTube videos. I had all the knowledge. I was reading articles and stuff. But deep down, when I was 210 pounds, I still saw myself as a fat Muslim guy. It wasn't a question of what I had in terms of tools. My identity was warped. It wasn't truly in congruence with what I was trying to do in my external environment. And I was borrowing discipline from motivation instead of building it into who I was. And what I mean by this is that every time motivation came up, I would apply discipline to that instead of applying it to who I was and who would be able to execute no matter whether I had motivation or not. And what I'm going to get into now is something that no one truly talks about because, one, they don't have the framework that we have as Muslims, but two, it's honestly the most the it's a very integrated way of looking at your psychology when it comes to how to apply your identity as a Muslim to getting in shape. And what I want to talk about is the nafs, and this is the part in fitness nobody talks about because it's just not something that's trending or that's true applicable at first sight. So when we look in the Quran or even just Islam as a whole, we have this concept known as nafs al-amara, and this is the part of your ego, your part of yourself, if you want to call it that, which is commanding you towards certain things. So in this context, that's the part of you that pulls you towards ease, comfort, shortcuts, slacking off, procrastination. And you tell yourself things like, oh, I'll start tomorrow, I'll start on Monday, or one cheat meal won't hurt, or one cheat day won't hurt, or I was too busy this week, or I had this come up, or I had that come up. And this is the part of yourself that is untamed. And it's the part, it's your identity that is, no matter what you do in terms of the rubber band example I gave, it just snaps back. And this is where you are stuck right now. And the honest reality is that no one talks about this because everyone talks about discipline. And that's fine if you're someone who has a strongly rooted identity in the first place, but none of them talk about the nafs because if you don't know what you're fighting against, or if you don't understand what's actually going on, you will keep losing to your enemy. I mean, just think about it in terms of like a war, a battle. If you don't know what you're up against, you don't know what their tactics are, you don't know what weapons they have, you will lose because you will be going into it blind. And when you think about yourself and your patterns and what you've been dealing with up until this point in terms of trying to lose weight or just getting shape, this is a deeply spiritual battle. And it's not just a fitness challenge that you keep feeling over and over again. This is a deeply spiritual battle because this is how your soul, your nafs more specifically, has been operating, and it's been just like beating you down every time you try to get back up. It just beats you down because you don't know how to actually counter it. And the way to understand this even more deeply is that motivation at its core is what fuels the nafs. And the nafs loves when it's motivated because it knows it's short-lived. It knows it feels good. It knows it's like, oh, like this guy he's gonna get motivated, and if he doesn't have any structure in place, he's gonna fall back. The nafs loves motivation because it's so internally gratifying. But the identity, who you see yourself as, is what fuels the ruh, which is your spirit, which is your essence, if you want to call it that. So motivation, like I said, it feels exciting. It's that rush on day one or day zero when you're getting everything together. But it's an emotion at the end of the day, and your nafs feeds on that emotion. And when the emotion fades, as it always does, the nafs wins because you were not anchored in something that is not going to change. But when it comes to your identity, this is rooted in your soul. Because when you see your body as a trust from Allah, as an amana from Allah, that you will be questioned about, that you'll be asked about, then it's not a question of, do I have motivation today or not? It's just, you show because that's just who you are. You know that at your core, you're a soul, you have, a responsibility to Allah. And once you start seeing yourself from that lens, then the identity just kicks in. It's just like this is who I am. So why wouldn't I go to the gym? Why wouldn't I eat clean? Why wouldn't I sleep on time? It's just who you are, and that's what your soul, your ruh, is truly. That's what feeds it. And the shift from motivation to identity is a shift from nafs driven to ruh driven. And this is critical because I don't think anyone has really explained this way. But if you're a Muslim who's caught up on how your nafs works or how your person, your soul works, and this is going to be transformational because you're finally seeing that there's an aspect of you that is fighting you, but another aspect of you that's been deprived because you just haven't been giving it the thing that it truly needs. And that's the unlock. If you understand this, then you understand what actually goes into creating a successful fitness journey. And to bring this home, I want you to understand that Prophet Muhammad SAW, he didn't need or didn't have a fitness journey. And if you want, you can make the argument that hey, it was a totally different context. There were no gyms, obviously. There was no, there was no structured way of going about fitness. I would argue that's even that's not true because when you look at um, martial training or preparing for war or wrestling, these were things that were still happening in the prophetic environment. We just don't know as much. But just let's just work on the fact that he didn't have a fitness journey that we can model one to one and apply to our context. But we can still learn from him. He sallallahu, he was consistent, and what this means is that he walked, he rode, he wrestled, he carried himself with physical strength, and there were no on seasons and there were no off seasons either, because that's just who he was. He carried himself with that vigor, with that energy, because that's what was required for his mission, and that's what he was modeling for his companions. And none of this was a phase. There was never a phase where we see that the Prophet ﷺ, he was not actively engaging in the community or doing things that he was required to do, or just taking time off or anything, because his mission was so critical that him being physically involved was just part of who he was, and he embodied this to perfection. And that's where this concept of consistency and steadfastness and all these different things, they come up, because the prophetic example is showing us what consistency looks like. It's just like a part of who you are. You're just strong, you have energy, you have vigor, because that's what your life requires, and you're able to do so much more because you have that. And when we look at the Quran, there's several ayat, several verses that talk about being on the straight path. Even in the first chapter it says "Ihdina siratal mustaqim," which is guide us to the straight path. And when we think about a straight path, when we actually reflect on this, it's a long road. If you want to think of it that way, it's a long highway. And for you to reach your end destination, you can't just sprint on it for a bit and then just fall off. The best way to stay on the straight path is to actually keep walking, no matter how slowly you're going. As long as you're on the path and as long as you're making some progress every single day, then you'll reach your destination, which in our case is, reaching paradise and being, Allah being pleased with us. And that when we apply that intention to fitness, then being on the straight path will also include your fitness journey, because you'll be looking at your fitness in that lens. So the identity you need to build is what I call the sacred athlete. And this is very simply a Muslim man who treats his body as an amana, like we talked about. It's a trust from Allah. Your body is not a throwaway thing that you can just abuse however you want. It's actually something you can be asked about. And he trains it out of this sense of responsibility. He trains it because, one, he will be asked about it, but two, when he fulfills the rights of the body, it actually gives him something back. It's not just something you're doing just because it's vain, or you're just doing just for just to look good or whatever. There's actually tangible benefits that come out of this. And he doesn't quit because quitting contradicts who he is fundamentally. Because if you think about it, a Muslim man who understands all of these concepts, he's not going to quit unless something life-changing happens, because it's just who he is. He's going to keep up his fitness. He's going to keep up the good habits, because that's just who he is supposed to be. And when you look at the sacred athlete identity from this lens, then you understand that this is not a program, this is not a diet phase, this is not a fitness challenge. This is truly an identity. This is who you are at your core. And when you've built that identity, when you understand who you truly are at your essence, then the cycle of restarting is over. It just ends. It just goes poof, because there's nothing to restart. You can't restart something you never stopped. So even at this point, if you're watching this right now and you're like, hey, but I've actually never started, then you have to understand that you're just in a dormant phase. You're just in a phase right now where the ingredients are already there. But if you start seeing yourself, even right now, even when you're watching this video and you've never actually gotten in shape before, if you start seeing yourself for once as like, yeah, I'm just the guy who trains, I'm just the Muslim man who is in shape, then this is just a temporary phase. And until you start acting in congruence with that new identity that you start working on, then it's just never, it's just, okay, like I just restarted something that I was supposed to do this whole time. Now, there will be a question of like, well, but I've tried changing my mindset before. I've tried like working on how I think or, my psychology, whatever, and it's just never stuck. And, the thing is that, when you look at things you might have tried in the past, if you've done affirmations or you've done positive thinking and you like stood in front of the mirror and saying, I'm fit, I'm energetic, I'm lean, or whatever, and you've done these like tactics, then that's just putting on a costume. That's just pretending because it's not truly anchored in anything. These things, I'm not saying they don't help. I'm not saying they don't have some truth to them when it comes to how you actually, see yourself. But the way you want you to think about this is that your affirmations, your positive thinking, they will only stick when that identity is truly there, is truly anchored. And the actual identity change is making a decision about who you're becoming and acting accordingly, especially when it's hard. That's becoming. When you become something, then all these tactics, all these strategies, all these things that you're trying to put onto it, that's when they start sticking. I mean, think about it this way. If you're going back to the suit example, if you're putting on a suit and before you put the suit on, you worry about like what tie you're gonna have on, or what tie bar, or like what cufflinks you're gonna have, but you never put the suit on in the first place, then it's just pointless. All those things come in once you've actually put the suit on, which in our case is the identity that we're trying to build. And I'm not asking you to pretend, even though some of the things that we talk about, I mentioned there, like, oh, like I'm pretending, I'm acting as if, like, as if something I'm someone different. What I'm asking you to do is to decide who you are and then act in accordance with that, even when it's uncomfortable, especially when it's uncomfortable. Because here's the thing, there will be a transitory phase, there will be a transition phase between who you are right now and where you need to be that is critical. You cannot skip it, but it will feel uncomfortable because you're becoming a totally different person. To pretend is to stay in your current identity and to pretend you're something different. But when you're deciding and acting that you're going to become a completely different person, then that looks completely differently because it will feel uncomfortable, but it will feel like it's worth it because you're becoming a new person, a new man because of it. Now, how identity change actually works. This is where it gets tactical because we talked about the psychology behind it. We talked about what things you've tried in the past and why it hasn't stuck. But how do we actually make this happen? The way this happens is it happens through small votes. This is where, during that transitory phase, this is where you need to cast as many votes in favor of the new identity that you're creating. So when you go to the gym when you don't feel like it, that's a vote for the sacred athlete identity. That's you telling yourself that, hey, I went to the gym, I'm acting in accordance with who I'm supposed to be. Every time you hit your protein goal, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's like 11 p.m. at night and you're still eating your Greek yogurt or whatever, that's a vote in favor of that new identity. When you say no to the second plate or the third plate or that dessert at that wedding, that's a vote. When you wake up for Fajr and you move your body and you hydrate and you get your sunlight, that's also a vote. And you don't become a new person overnight. I don't want you to, get the have this misunderstanding that, oh, this is something I can just do overnight. This is a compounding effort, and you become a new person through hundreds, maybe even thousands of small decisions that compound every single day, multiple times a day. And the thing is, each vote makes the next one easier. And what's also good about this is that you can definitely apply the streak method to this, where you're working, you're counting as many days as that you do in a row. But the more important thing is to just cast an overwhelming number of votes in favor of who you want to be. That just becomes who you are. That's just who you are because you just done those things so many times that you look back at your old identity and you're like, how was I living that way? How was I not moving? How was I barely walking 3,000 steps a day? How was I not training for months on end? When you compare it to how you are now, because you've cast that many votes in favor of your new identity. Another thing that I want to talk about is what I call the Toba framework. Now, if you're a Muslim, you understand what Toba is, where it's generally translated as repentance, and this is a honestly, if you think about it, it's a whole framework when it comes to how you turn back to Allah. But I want to apply it to your fitness journey and give you a new perspective on this. So, real Tawbah, when you think about it, even in the classical understanding of it, it's not just saying astaghfirullah once and just moving on as if nothing happened. It has steps, and we're not going to talk about those steps from a spiritual lens necessarily, but we're going to apply them to fitness and see how we can take this framework and apply it in this new setting. So when we start applying Tawbah in the right way, we have to first recognize the mistake we've made. If you don't think you've made a mistake, if you don't think nothing's wrong, then you can't change. If you don't think that, eating at, 2 a.m. because you're feeling stressed from the day and that's the only time that, you're soothing yourself is a mistake in the first place, then no amount of tactics, no amount of anyone helping you will actually change anything because you don't even see yourself as doing something wrong. So you first need to understand that there's a mistake that's happening. The next step is actually feeling genuine regret for actually doing that. And, it's regret, when you think about it, it's a very uncomfortable feeling. It's not something that, we want to feel. But in the context of this framework, if you don't feel regret for what you're doing, even though you might recognize it as a mistake, then you're not going to change because it's going to justify it. It's like, oh, well, that's just who it is. Like, yeah, it's not good to be binge eating at 2 a.m. and, skipping the gym or whatever, but it is what it is. If you don't feel any regret, any remorse for what you're leaving on the table, then, nothing will change. The next step from there is committing to not repeating that mistake. So if you've gone through this and you get to a point where like, yeah, it's bad, you feel bad, but you tell yourself that, hey, well, I don't know, like, tomorrow, yeah, I'll be good for like a couple of days, but I know I'll get back to repeating that mistake. And one thing I heard from a scholar is that, this is also a trick of the shaitan where he tells you that, hey, you're just going to do that mistake again, so why bother changing anything? And what you have to understand is that you're not guaranteed tomorrow. You're not guaranteed any amount of time in the future. So you making this commitment is what's actually going to help you change in the first place because you're actually committing to a new version of yourself. And from that point on, you actually take the corrective action. And the corrective action is what a lot of us we default to because like, oh, like I just need to fix this. But if you haven't gone through this framework, you haven't gone through these steps, then the corrective action has no backing, has no foundation because it isn't anchored in the right steps. So, the hard question when it comes to, you restarting your fitness journey or you making the same mistakes over and over and over again, we ask this question of how many times have you restarted? And part of that is actually understanding that you actually never did tawbah in this new framework that I'm talking about from the patterns that made you quit in the first place, right? So, you've done things like you've had this shiny, object syndrome where you try keto, then you try vegan, then you try carnivore, then you try working out 6 times a week, then you try working out just once a week. You tried all these different things. And the pattern there is until you make tawbah, in that sense from moving on too quickly from one thing to another and not actually giving any one thing your fullest attention until you do tawbah from that and actually understand that okay, I've been making this mistake. I actually need to commit to something for once and see if it works as an example. Then you'll keep restarting, and you keep the thing is you keep repeating the same approach, the same things that you think will work, and you expect different results. And real change means identifying why you quit in the first place and addressing that root cause. Not just starting a new program, not just hiring a new coach, even though, I'm a coach who helps clients get in shape. If you think a coach will solve your problems without actually working on this, then, you could hire, Arnold, and even that won't help because you will still see yourself from the wrong lens and you haven't built that identity. So it doesn't matter if you hire Mr. Olympia, if you see yourself this way, then nothing will truly change. Now, I also want to go into the 3 root causes behind a restart because I've given you a general sense of what this looks like, but let's actually go into some major causes that I see with a lot of people when it comes to this. The first one is that you tie your fitness to an event or a situation or a circumstance, something that's happening in your life, not your identity. So you tell yourself, and this is common for a lot of guys who are, trying to get married. It's like, oh, I need to lose weight for the wedding. That's a noble goal, and in some cases that can actually stick because if you work with someone who actually has this understanding of your nafs versus your ruh, then they will tell you that, hey, it's great that you're working to lose weight for your wedding, but when it comes to your wedding, that's an added responsibility on your life. You need to, your wife has a right over you for you to look good and for you to be attractive and maintain that compatibility long term, so on and so forth. But if you just see it just for that one event, the wedding will come and go. You'll have your honeymoon phase, all those good things. But then as soon as you get back into normal life, so to speak, as soon as the rose-colored glasses come off, then your effort will also fade because, once you start going back to work and you're paying bills and, things are just normal, then, you won't, you, those, they'll never, they're not, there won't be another wedding to look forward to. At least I hope not. Um, so it'll just be this one thing that was the apex of your existence, and then everything will fall off after that. If you tie it to identity though, then you'll just be like, yeah, I'm just a fit husband. I'm a fit Muslim husband who looks good for his wife because she deserves that. Then, wedding or not, I mean, you'll put in the effort because that's just who you are. The second mistake, or the second root cause, is that you went too extreme too fast. This is a very, very common mistake, and it comes from many different. It comes from many different places, but it's one manifestation of that is that you're punishing yourself because you see yourself as like, oh, like I've been such a bad boy or ganda bacha or whatever for all these years, so I need to actually punish myself and actually do this like the hard way because the hard way, more is better. More is more. So you do 6 days a week at the gym. You cut your calories by 1,500 right off the bat, and there's no flexibility. There's no eating out. There's no socializing. There's nothing like that. And you'll get some results for the first 3 weeks, but after that, it's not sustainable. Your nafs though, it'll encourage you in the beginning, like, hey, this is great, this is wonderful, like this is exactly what we needed. But at some point, your nafs, which is your inner child, if you want to think about it that way, it will rebel because it's like this is too hard. Like, why are you putting me through this? And you will, if you've been through this, if you've been through a restart, you probably had some version of this. And number three is having no accountability and no structure and no actual thought process behind what you're doing. So you have this general sense of like, hey, I need to get in shape, and it's been 6 months since I tried anything. So you just throw yourself into whatever. You sign up for the gym. You start going 5 days a week, 4 days a week even, and you're just like, let me eat more protein. Let me do some cardio here. Let me just not eat these carbs or whatever. And because there's no actual thought process behind what you're doing, and there's no system. Your willpower, it's a finite resource if you think about it. Your willpower can only last for so long, and if there's nothing holding you accountable to your goals, then it will only last for so long because there's nothing anchoring you in something that actually holds you accountable. Now, what the last time, if you've made it this far in the video and you're like, okay, I see what I've been doing wrong and I know that I need to change, but what will the last time actually look like? What will it actually look like when I actually commit to this for the last time, I reach my goal, and then I start working and living in this new identity that you've been talking about? It doesn't start with a motivational video at 2 a.m., although it can. I'm not saying 2 a.m. is a bad time to if you're watching this at 2 a.m. I'm honored that you're watching this, watching me speak at 2 a.m. But it's 2 a.m., 2 p.m., it doesn't matter. It starts with this decision that you make with yourself. It's a covenant, it's a vow that I'm done being this version of myself. Not I'm done acting this way, not I'm done, eating junk food or whatever. It's truly telling yourself that I'm done being who I am right now because this version of myself is not serving me. And then, once you've had that moment, once you've told yourself that, hey, this is just who I'm fed up with and who I'm going to become, then the boring work starts. And this is what no one talks about because they're like, oh, it's going to be like this this festival. There's going to be fireworks going off, and every time I go into the gym, there's going to be trumpets, and it's nothing like that. Anyone who's gotten in shape will tell you it's boring. But boring is, you start falling in love with it. It only seems boring in the beginning, but it's boring in the sense that you're not changing things. You're not introducing new things just to keep the variation, or just like keep your interest peaked in that thing. You show up to the gym on the days you don't want to because that's just who you are. You eat within your calories when nobody's watching because that's just who you are. And you don't announce it on social media unless you're actually trying to, have that public accountability, because that's just who you are. You do all these things because that's just who you are becoming at this point. And you just do it consistently for months until you get to a point. You reach one day when you realize you didn't restart anything because you never stopped in the first place. That's the beautiful part about having this identity framework when it comes to your fitness journey. I need to tell you just like straight, if you start adopting this, then there was never any restart. It was just failed attempts because your identity wasn't anchored the way it needed to be. But if you've gotten to this point in the video and you realize that there's actually something at play when it comes to identity, then you never stopped, and you just need to pick back, the habits, the workouts, whatever, because that's just who you are. Now, the hard truth about all of this is that nobody is coming to save you from the cycle. Even though in this video, I'm trying to do you a massive favor in terms of actually breaking this down for you, but even I can't save you when it comes to the cycle. This is something that you need to do for yourself. No new app will fix this. It doesn't matter what new version of MyFitnessPal comes up, it will not fix this. No new program will fix this. No new diet will fix this. I would argue even no new coach will fix this necessarily unless they understand this identity aspect of things. The thing is, the information has never been the problem. We're living in an information overload age where you can ask ChatGPT, you can ask Claude, you can ask all these different AI tools, and it'll give you a massively detailed answer in terms of what you need to do. That will not help you because you already know what to do. If you're watching this, you already have some version of a plan that you're already thinking about executing right after you're done with this video. The problem is you keep approaching this whole thing as something you need to do instead of something you are. I need to make this point over and over again in different ways to help you understand that it's not about doing anything necessarily. It's just like, this is who I am. I work out, I eat clean, I do all these things because that's just who I am. There's nothing to do necessarily. There's no mental, effort that needs to go into this. It's just like, okay, this is who I am, so why would I not do this? And until you make that shift, until you truly start understanding that there is something wrong here when it comes to how you're approaching this, you will keep restarting. Now, I'm telling you this because I was stuck in that same cycle when I was 210 pounds, when it had been 2 years during the COVID lockdown, and I was just like, hey, I don't know how to lose weight, and I was trying different things, but nothing was sticking. And nobody told me the truth because, I didn't have this video. So, you're very fortunate that you're watching this, and I'm giving it to you right here. So at this point, you have a couple different options in terms of what you can do. So first is if you want a free course that goes very deeply into the sacred athlete identity, and it's a full 6-hour course, but the first step is really just building this at a deeper level, how to build it, how to make it stick, and how to never restart again. Then go to the link in the description for that free course. But if you want to work with me one-on-one and you're done figuring this out and you want me coaching you through this personally and actually building an entire framework, an entire protocol in terms of how to work on your identity, then you can either DM me Bismillah on Instagram. My Instagram is right there, or you can apply to the link in my bio and fill out the application. And if you're qualified to work with me, then inshallah I'll break down what that works for you. But if you made this far, this is the last restart. If you start making your identity anchored into who you need to be, then this is the last restart, and let's make it count. So that was a video. Let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comments down below. And inshallah, I'll see you in the next video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.